Welcome to Propeller Breeze, the show for student pilots, sim fans, and everyone chasing that first solo and beyond. All information in this podcast is for entertainment and general knowledge only. Always verify with certified flight instructors or regulatory authorities before attempting anything mentioned here.
Imagine you're on a short final. You're 500 feet above the runway, right? And you suddenly realize you're sinking just a bit too fast.
Getting uncomfortably close to the trees.
Exactly. Getting way too close to the trees. So, you do what you're taught. You pull back on the yoke to arrest the descent. You push the throttle full forward. The engine is roaring. You're doing literally everything to climb.
But the airplane just keeps sinking.
Yeah, it just keeps sinking. And to understand why physics suddenly stopped forgiving your mistakes in that terrifying moment, we have to completely change how we look at an airplane.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We have a massive stack of sources on the desk. Today, we're talking flight training manuals, aerodynamics research, and some really dense aviation physics papers.
Very dense.
Yes, super dense. But our mission today is to synthesize all of it for you, the student pilot working toward your private pilot license. Because we are going to stop flying the mechanical plane and, start flying the invisible energy matrix.
Right, aircraft energy management. Exactly. But to do that effectively, we need to draw a really strict boundary around what we're actually analyzing from these sources, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when the aviation industry discusses, energy management in this specific context, they are absolutely not talking about miles per gallon.
Right.
We are leaving fuel efficiency, economical cruising, leaning the mixture for long cross-country flights. All of that is completely out of the conversation.
So nobody cares how much avgas we're saving today.
Not even a little bit. Right now, we only care about the immediate life or death physics of keeping the airplane safely in the sky. The sources focus purely on the process of planning, monitoring, and controlling your altitude and your airspeed targets.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if we want to manage this energy, we really have to stop thinking of the Cessna or the Piper as just a static piece of metal responding to cables and pulleys. We need to look at it as a dynamic, almost, breathing system.
So physicists actually refer to a flying airplane as an open energy system.
An open system meaning what exactly?
Meaning it's never in isolation. It's in this constant aggressive negotiation with its environment. So it gains energy from a source.
Which is the fuel.
Right, the combustion of fuel turning the propeller to create thrust.
Yeah.
And then it bleeds energy into the environment through the friction and resistance of the surrounding air.
Drag.
Exactly, drag. And as the pilot in command, your primary job isn't actually steering.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. Your job is managing what the aerodynamics papers call total mechanical energy.
Total mechanical energy. Okay, so let's make this relatable. Think of total mechanical energy as your pilot bank account.
I like that.
Yeah, because every maneuver you do, relies on this account. And it holds two very specific types of currency. The first currency is your savings account. This is your potential energy.
Which, when you're in the cockpit, translates directly to your altitude.
Right.
The higher you climb, the more potential energy you stash away. The formula the texts use is the airplane's mass multiplied by the gravitational constant multiplied by altitude.
Mm-hmm.
But, the application is what really matters here.
Right, the real world feel of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Altitude is energy stored safely away for a rainy day. Like, if you lose your engine at 5,000 feet, you have a massive savings account to draw from to go find a runway.
Yeah, you've got time. And then you have the second currency, which is your checking account. This is your kinetic energy, or, the energy of motion. On your instrument panel, this is just your airspeed indicator.
And the math behind kinetic energy dictates a lot of the weird aerodynamic effects that student pilots really struggle with.
Oh, for sure.
Because the formula is 1/2 the airplane's mass multiplied by the airspeed squared. The velocity is squared.
And that square is the crucial part that trips everyone up. If you increase your airspeed from, say, 50 knots to 100 knots, you didn't just double your kinetic energy.
No, you quadrupled it.
Right. You quadrupled it. Which explains a very common frustration for student pilots. You carry just 10 extra knots of airspeed over the runway threshold, thinking, oh, it's just a minor buffer, it's fine.
And suddenly you float past the 1,000-foot markers.
Yes.
Past the midpoint, and you were literally running out of asphalt because that extra 10 knots didn't add a linear amount of energy. It exponentially inflated your checking account, and the airplane simply refuses to stop flying until it spends that energy.
It's got to spend the money, and that brings up a really great concept from the sources. the energy state. Your energy state is just a snapshot of your total wealth at any given second.
Right.
Like, how much total mechanical energy do you have, and exactly how is it distributed between your altitude savings and your airspeed checking? Because as a pilot, you spend your entire flight making energy exchanges.
Yeah, every time you touch the yoke, you're essentially walking up to the bank teller and asking to transfer funds.
Exactly. Like, pitching the nose down is a withdrawal from the altitude savings account, deposited directly into the airspeed checking account. You lose altitude, but the airplane accelerates.
And pitching up is the reverse transfer. You bleed off that kinetic speed to buy potential altitude. But, a bank account isn't just about moving existing money back and forth between checking and savings.
Right, you need actual money coming in.
Yes. To actually grow your wealth or to just keep from going bankrupt, you need income and you have to pay your bills.
Okay, so let's map that onto the open system. What is the income?
In the aerodynamic open system, your income is defined as power available. This is the airplane's rate of energy gain created by the maximum engine thrust at whatever airspeed you happen to be flying at.
Okay.
The text express this as thrust multiplied by velocity. It's measured in horsepower or foot-pounds per minute. Basically, that is the absolute maximum paycheck your engine can deliver.
Got it. Meanwhile, your expenses are constantly draining the account, and that's your power required. This is the rate of energy loss due to the total drag on the airplane. It's expressed as drag multiplied by velocity. So every bit of air resistance is a bill you have to pay.
Yeah, and think about things like dropping your landing gear, extending your flaps, or putting the airplane into a forward slip to lose altitude.
All right, those are huge bills.
Huge bills. Those actions are intentionally taking on massive aerodynamic debt. You are drastically increasing your expenses to purposely drain energy out of the system.
And the relationship between your income and those expenses gives us the central rule of the sky, which the sources call the energy balance equation. The net transfer of energy, so your thrust minus your drag, always equals the change in your total mechanical energy.
That's the fundamental rule, yes.
But, okay, I actually have to push back on the sources here because there's a big caveat in the physics papers that just seems completely counterintuitive for real-world flying.
What's that?
Well, the texts say this simplified equation ignores the long-term reduction in aircraft weight as fuel is burned off. And I'm sitting here thinking, why would aviation physics completely ignore fuel burn? I mean, if I take a Cessna 172 up for a 4-hour cross-country, I'm burning off over 100 pounds of fuel.
Sure.
That fundamentally changes the mass of the airplane, which changes the kinetic and potential energy math we just established, right?
Well, if we connect these to the bigger picture, it really comes down to the time scale of the emergency.
What do you mean?
You are correct that over a 4-hour flight, burning fuel changes your performance data. You will climb faster and cruise more efficiently in hour 4 than in hour 1, simply because you're lighter.
Right.
But the energy balance equation we are discussing from these papers is used to analyze instantaneous mechanical energy control.
Oh, so we are talking about split-second reactions?
Precisely. When you are on short final battling a crosswind, or trying to recover from an imminent stall, the fraction of an ounce of fuel you burn during those 10 critical seconds has mathematically zero impact on your mass.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
For the purpose of immediate flight control and keeping the wings lifting, your mass is basically a constant. The energy exchange happens far too rapidly for the fuel gauge to matter.
I see. So the danger is immediate, not gradual. Okay, so from this balance of income and expenses, the aerodynamicists give us two really vital metrics. The first one determines what your airplane is actually capable of doing at any given second, which is specific excess power.
Or PS, as it's often written. This metric is found by taking your power available, subtracting your power required, and dividing that number by the airplane's weight.
Okay, let's avoid the textbook math for a second and talk about what that actually feels like. Specific excess power is basically your disposable income.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
Right, because if your specific excess power is 0, you are financially maxed out. Your income exactly matches your massive expenses. You can have the throttle shoved all the way to the firewall, the engine screaming at redline, but you literally cannot climb a single foot and you cannot accelerate a single knot.
Your altimeter and airspeed indicator are just frozen.
Frozen.
And it is a profound feeling of helplessness in the cockpit. You are demanding performance the airplane simply does not possess. And that leads to the second metric derived from the balance, which is even more abstract. Energy height or total specific energy.
Now, this one blew my mind when I was reading through the stack. Energy height is the absolute maximum height you could reach from your current altitude if you forcefully traded all of your speed for altitude.
It is the ultimate energy exchange.
Right. So picture you're flying straight and level at 2,000 feet. Suddenly, you yank back on the yoke and enter a steep zoom climb. You are aggressively cashing out every single penny in your airspeed checking account, converting it all into altitude savings.
Yep.
And eventually, of course, the airspeed bleeds down to the stalling speed, the wings quit flying, and the nose drops. That exact theoretical peak altitude you reach just before the stall, that is your energy height.
Exactly.
It's like this invisible ceiling floating constantly above your airplane, dictating the absolute limit of your potential.
And visualizing that invisible ceiling is a fantastic way to grasp your energy state. But, the sources don't just leave us in the realm of theory.
No, they get very practical.
They do. Because the true value of this matrix is in diagnostics.
Yeah.
We really need to put the listener in a scenario where the math isn't mathing.
Let's do it. Okay. You are a student pilot. You're 3 miles out on final approach. You're trying to hit your glide slope and your target approach speed, but you look at the runway numbers, you look at your instruments, and things are a mess.
A total mess.
You are experiencing what the flight manuals call an energy error, basically a deviation from your intended target.
And the bank account analogy becomes your absolute best diagnostic tool here. The texts divide these botched approaches into 2 distinct categories.
Okay.
The first is a total energy error.
So a total energy error means your overall wealth is just wrong. You simply have way too much money or way too little money for the approach you're trying to fly.
Right. And the primary symptom of a total energy error is that your altitude and your airspeed deviate in the exact same direction.
Same direction. Okay, so for example, you are flying high above the glide slope, and D, you are flying much faster than your target speed. You are high and fast.
Yes.
Or the terrifying alternative, you are sinking below the glide slope, and D, your airspeed is decaying. You are low and slow. Both of your accounts are moving together.
Exactly. And in that situation, your entire energy state is completely incompatible with the runway. You don't just have a distribution problem. You literally need to inject energy into the open system or aggressively bleed it out.
So that's the first category. But the second category is much trickier for new pilots to recognize, I think. It's the energy distribution error.
This one is very common.
Yeah, because this is a scenario where your total mechanical energy, like your overall wealth, is actually spot on. You have the exact correct amount of energy to make a perfect landing, but your allocation is flawed.
And the symptom to look for here is your altitude and airspeed deviating in opposite directions.
Right. So you are above the glide path, but you are flying dangerously slow. You have all your money hoarded in the altitude savings account, and your airspeed checking account is overdrawn.
Right.
Or the reverse.
No.
You are below the glide path,
Yeah.
You're coming in way too fast. Opposite direction.
And identifying which error you have completely dictates your physical inputs on the flight controls. Because a really common mistake during early flight training is misdiagnosing a total energy error as a distribution error.
Oh, I've done this. I've 100% done this. I remember being a student pilot, coming in high on final. I looked out the window, realized I was overshooting the glide slope, and I just shoved the nose down.
Naturally.
Yeah, I pitched down to force the airplane toward the runway.
Which is an energy exchange. You transfer potential energy into kinetic energy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I just shuffled the money around, so I solved my altitude problem, sure. But by the time I crossed the runway threshold, my airspeed checking account was incredibly bloated.
Yeah.
I was flying like 15 knots too fast, floating all the way down the runway, and I eventually just had to execute a go-around.
Right.
Because I had a total energy error. I was high and fast, but I tried to fix it with an energy exchange.
Which never works. Pitching down when you are already fast just exacerbates the kinetic energy problem.
Oh, big time.
To fix a total energy error, you have to change your income or your expenses. If you are high and fast, you need to pull the throttle back to reduce your power available, and perhaps add flaps or slip the aircraft to drastically increase your power required. You have to drain the system.
Bleed the energy out. But conversely, if you have an energy distribution error, let's say you are high but dangerously slow, you don't necessarily need to touch the throttle.
No, you don't.
Because you already have the right amount of total energy. You just need to ease the nose down, cashing out some of that excess altitude to buy back your safe airspeed.
Exactly. It replaces the panicked guessing game of push this, pull that with calculated physics management.
It really does.
But we really need to discuss the severe warning hidden in these aerodynamics texts. Because when a pilot mismanages these accounts, they can cross a threshold where the matrix simply collapses.
The danger zone.
Yeah. What's fascinating and really terrifying here is the concept defined as irreversible deceleration and/or sink rate.
Man, that word irreversible is heavy. It means you were out of options.
It is the unrecoverable depletion of your mechanical energy. This phenomenon occurs when a pilot experiences a continuous loss of airspeed or altitude, or both, combined with insufficient specific excess power to arrest the descent.
So this goes back to our 500-foot scenario from the very beginning of the show. You're low and slow on approach. Your checking account is empty. Your savings account is empty. You panic, and you push the throttle full forward, demanding maximum income.
Right.
So why doesn't the airplane climb?
It comes down to understanding aerodynamic expenses, specifically something called induced drag. As your airspeed decays, the airplane loses lift. To compensate and keep the airplane from dropping, the pilot naturally pulls back on the yoke, right?
Yeah, that's instinct.
Which increases the wing's angle of attack.
Yeah.
The wing has to take a massive aggressive bite out of the air just to maintain its current lift.
But taking that massive bite creates a wall of air resistance. The wing practically turns into a parachute.
Exactly. That is the region of reverse command. Normally, to fly slower, you reduce power. But in the region of reverse command, your angle of attack is so incredibly high that the induced drag skyrockets.
Wow.
Your expenses are multiplying exponentially at the exact moment your bank accounts are empty.
So even with the throttle firewalled, your maximum power available cannot overcome the monstrous power required by that induced drag.
Correct.
Your income is capped, but your bills are infinite.
And your specific excess power drops into the negative. You have no surplus energy to accelerate out of the high drag state and no surplus energy to climb. You are trapped in an irreversible sink rate.
And the flight manuals deliver a very stark bottom line regarding this state. If you fail to recognize this energy drain and you enter an irreversible sink rate below a critical altitude above ground level, the airplane will hit the ground.
It would.
It completely removes the human element from the equation. It does not matter how skilled of a pilot you are. It does not matter how hard you pull the yoke into your chest. The physics equation has a zero balance, and you are entirely out of ideas.
The aircraft is ultimately a physical object bound by the laws of mechanics. If the energy is not in the system, the lift cannot exist.
It's that simple.
Safety is ultimately about anticipating your expenses before they bankrupt you. You have to ensure your specific excess power is always sufficient to keep you out of that region of reverse command.
It's a really sobering reality, but honestly, once you grasp it, it completely empowers you in the left seat. You're no longer just a passenger crossing your fingers hoping the mechanical linkages do what you ask. You are an energy manager.
Absolutely.
So to wrap up this deep dive, consider how this shifts your entire approach to flight training. A truly successful student pilot doesn't just blindly memorize V-speeds to pass an FAA-written exam.
No, they don't.
They learn to feel the total mechanical energy of their aircraft through the seat of their pants. They monitor the delicate balance of the altitude savings account and the airspeed checking account.
They are constantly evaluating their approach, identifying whether a deviation requires an injection of power, an addition of drag, or merely a subtle exchange of pitch.
Seeing the matrix really changes the entire sky. But before we sign off today, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, specifically building on that concept of energy height we talked about earlier.
Well, this is a good one.
Yeah. So as a student pilot, you practice simulated engine failures constantly. Your instructor reaches over, pulls the throttle to idle, and suddenly says, engine out. In an instant, your income drops to zero. Your power available is gone. You establish your best glide speed, and you look out the window to pick an emergency landing field. But think about this. How would intuitively feeling your precise energy height in that terrifying moment change your decision-making?
It changes everything.
It really does. The altimeter tells you you are at 3,000 feet. But if you factored in the kinetic energy of your current airspeed, like knowing exactly how much higher you could pop the nose up to clear a tree line, or exactly how much farther you could stretch a glide by, carefully draining both accounts to zero right over the threshold, how would that alter your judgment?
It gives you a much truer picture of your options.
Exactly. So next time you are in the cockpit, don't just stare at the altimeter and airspeed indicator as two isolated dials. Look through them. Try to feel the invisible, expanding and contracting energy bubble surrounding your airplane. Manage the matrix.
That's it for this episode. Keep your wings level, your brain sharp, and catch you next time in the pattern. Thanks for riding with Propeller Breeze.